Hi, welcome to a brief strategy session on working with difficult multiple choice questions. Today we'll focus on looking at a piece of Frankenstein test that hopefully will help you as you prepare for this second test that you're going to be taking over the second half of this book. So what I've done is I've selected about 8 questions of multiple choice that often cause difficulty for students who are looking at this. And it's not that the questions are so hard, it's that it seems like the answers are difficult to choose between and among. So the first thing I'll tell you is the best thing that you can do, the absolute best preparation to be successful in multiple choice, is to make sure you've read the material. There's no substitute for understanding like what happens inside the novel or what happens inside the short story or poem or whatever you find yourself being tested over. So having a working knowledge of not only the plot but the characters, how they interact, and basically a good old-fashioned like understanding of the book is going to help you. Now, if that means after you've read the book that you visit something like a Cliff Notes or Spark Notes or a Thug Notes or whatever medium that you use to help you understand things that are confusing, that's fine as well. But let's take a look at some of these questions, and then I'll go through some of the reasoning behind why certain choices can be eliminated. So let's look at this first question. Captain Walton, like Victor Frankenstein, wishes to, and then I have 4 choices to choose from. So the first thing when you're approaching a multiple choice is to quickly eliminate choices that you know for certain are going to be incorrect. And for me, the telltale sign of this is going to be there's 2 parts to this. There's Captain Walton and Victor Frankenstein. So all of these choices mean that they're something that both men wish to have happen. Okay? And we know from reading about Captain Walton that he does not want to be alone. He desires a friend. That's all he's been looking for. That's what he tells his sister. So this is a choice that I would quickly eliminate and say, hey, this is not even part of the answer. Okay. Now from them, I look at my other choices. Choice A, to become a famous name in the annals of science. B, to penetrate the unknown. And D, to destroy the creature before he himself is destroyed. So if you look at choice D, that too is true for Victor Frankenstein, but it's not true for Captain Walton. Captain Walton has never really met the creature other than a distant vision of it, and as far as he knows, he's just hearing the tale of some madman who he happened to find in the middle of nowhere near the North Pole. So while this is true for Victor, it's not necessarily true for Captain Walton. So we can eliminate D as a choice, which leaves us simply with these 2, A or B, to choose from. So how do we know which is the better one? So let's look a little closer at the choices. Become a famous name in the annals of science. We know certainly that that's true of Captain Walton. Okay. We don't really hear Victor because he doesn't seem to want to be a part of the scientific community. He's very isolated from all of that. So he doesn't really talk about being famous in science. He does talk about being known as a benefactor of mankind. So he's broadened it way beyond science. Both of them, however, do express this desire to be in a place where no one else has set foot, to penetrate into the unknown regions of the pole, to penetrate into the unknown regions of creation. So B becomes our better choice. We eliminated C and D, and we looked A as a little bit questionable for both men being true. So let's look at our next question. This is a question sometimes of vocabulary, and maybe paying attention in your classes as your teachers talk about it. So the novel begins and ends with a series of letters. So there's our key right there, the word letters, okay? Known as. So I'm looking for a word that means a series of letters. And that's how our story begins, letter 1 through 4, and then we're going to close the story with the final letter that Walton is going to write to his sister, Margaret Seville. So let's first look at what we know, okay? We have never encountered this term in our study of it, okay? It was not in any part of the lectures or notes. So because it's unfamiliar, I'm going to eliminate it as a possible choice. Another term that looks questionable to me is this anthropological. I've heard of anthropology, and I may not know what that is, but does anthropology, it sounds like a study of something. It doesn't sound like it would be a name for a series of letters, okay? So that leaves me with these two choices, B and C, that I'm choosing between. Now, this one looks very good to answer. Pre and post, so beginning and ending. I'm seeing that, but that's almost like a false clue. Script simply means like writing or a dialogue. I might find like a play script. Now, if I remember in class, and if I don't, I may have a working knowledge of like the New Testament and the idea that there were a series of letters, epistles, that were written between people like Paul to Timothy, and Peter, and all kinds of these apostles and disciples who were writing letters to citizens of other places. So an epistle, it turns out, is a letter, and this is exactly the term that was explained to you in class, the epistle form. So B is going to be our right choice on that one. Now, this is an interesting question. What characters from Paradise Lost does the creature feel he most resembles, and why? So this is almost asking you to go back into the book and remember that the creature does talk about Paradise Lost. We know the answer. It's going to be Adam. He talks about being like Adam and about being like Satan. So automatically I'm going to be confused, okay? So let's think about what character the creature would feel like he resembles, okay? Does the creature seem to feel like he's been part of some kind of paradise and been kicked out of it, out of like heavenly society? I don't think that happens. He never really describes like a Garden of Eden for him, and being kicked out by Victor. So that doesn't even fit close to it. So I could eliminate Satan and choice C there. We do see him acting like Adam, but if I look at these choices, I'm going to eliminate this first one because he doesn't really mention at all about being like one of a kind or, you know, a special chosen boy or what have you. And that's certainly not the reason that he feels like he most resembles Adam. B looks really good and D looks really good. Okay, but D has some problems. Let's look at it. He does mention that he feels like Lucifer. Does he feel and resemble like Lucifer because he feels he is inherently evil? Or does that evil come as a result of mankind rejecting him? And I think that's the closer answer, is that he doesn't feel like he's inherently bad. He sees himself as inherently good. And his problem is that mankind rejects him because of his deformity, because of his ugliness. So B becomes our best answer because, like Adam, he feels like he has been abandoned and left on his own and kicked out of the Garden of Eden with basically little reason. And so B is our best choice in this one. Now, I should tell you that all of these questions were chosen, many of them came from your first exam, because they were highly missed questions. And often it was a case of like choosing the right two but guessing wrongly on which one there. So let's look at this type of question. Victor indicates that his intentions for creating a living being are to benefit mankind, actually Victor seems merely bent upon penetrating the secrets of nature, to impress Elizabeth, or to get revenge on his neglectful parents. So let's look at one of these answers, this B, that looks really good, but actually what it's doing is it's changing the question. So the question is directly asking you for what Victor says about his intentions. This changes it to Victor doesn't say anything about that. He doesn't mention it. Well, in fact, he does. So what I've done in choice B is I've changed the question itself to make it into something that it's not. So B can be eliminated because that's really wouldn't be a proper answer for that. So that leaves us with these three. And I could certainly eliminate C because nowhere in his creations does he even really mention wanting to make a good impression on Elizabeth, his more than sister. And for that same reason, I can eliminate D. While he may have strong feelings about his father, he certainly seems to be love and adore his mother, who can do no wrong. We get this feeling when he has us talk about how angelic she is, and how when the creature finds the locket, he's mesmerized by the beauty of Caroline, who's not nearly, I'm sorry, he loves Caroline, who's much prettier than Justine, but Justine's okay. So I've eliminated really all the choices, leaving me with A as the only possibility that could be right. All right, so let's look at this next question. This was something that was talked about probably in class, definitely in class. So like many artists, Victor sees the beauty of his work, A, in the intention of the artist, B, in the physical labor of the creative process, C, in the resulting creation, or D, in the recognition of his creative genius. So if we're leaning toward narcissism, D looks really good, but that doesn't seem to be what Victor is suggesting. His view of beauty doesn't have to do with anything with his narcissistic tendencies. He doesn't want to be recognized a genius because that makes him more beautiful. So that doesn't really play into this. Okay. The beauty of his work, remember he says, I had gathered the parts as perfections. I wanted to make this thing, this beautiful creation. And then when he does it and he looks at the end result, he sees all these beautiful pieces that he's carefully chosen from animals, from humans, from wherever. And then he finds that after he stitched them together and he steps back, he realizes how ugly what he's done. So really, the beauty for him has to deal, it's got to be with either A or B. It's not in the resulting creation. That's not where he finds beauty. Okay? That's certainly not where he finds it. All right? He does talk about it in terms of gathering the pieces. He chose them specifically. He wants them for specific purposes and for their beauty. So B is a much better choice than A, because it's not in the intention that we find beauty, but it's rather in the process that we find beauty. All right, so let's look at, we're down to the last three. Victor's description of the creation of the monster suggests A, that electricity was a major component of his work. Now, here's one I want to look at. See this simple descriptor word? That's an example of a multiple choice question that looks good, but there's one tiny piece of it that throws it into error. So yes, electricity seems to be suggested, but is certainly not mentioned in the very scant paragraph describing the actual creation. The only time we actually see electricity is when he talks about the galvanism and when he sees that burning tree that's been struck by lightning. So this does not have anything to do, this is from Hollywood, okay? So don't get confused with that. So my other choices are that he used body parts from charnel houses, that he visits slaughterhouses as well as morgues, and that the work of creating man is loathsome. Well, he doesn't see that until after he's done, like digging the bodies. He says he doesn't mind digging up dead things. It never bothered him. It never spooked him out. Okay, B and C are very close answers. So these are vocabulary. We talked about charnel house. You had it on your vocabulary list. You could look that up. Same with morgue and same with slaughterhouse. Okay, so B and C are both correct answers, but C is going to be a better choice because it's more complete. So that's a lesson for you. If you have two that are close, choose the one that's the best or most complete answer as opposed to just the correct one. So yes, he does take from charnel houses, those raised mausoleums that are above ground, but we also were very clear that he's taking animal parts as well as body parts from morgues, charnel houses, and slaughterhouses. So C is your much better choice. All right, so here's an example. Let's look at a true-false question. Victor's view of beauty is directly related to his opinion of the person or object. So what is this saying? It's saying that Victor sees you as beautiful only if he has a high opinion. If he likes you, you're beautiful. If he doesn't like you, you're ugly. Okay? Do we have anything in here? I mean, we already answered a question about beauty being a part of the process. But when he encounters beauty, he talks in terms of his mother. Okay? He talks in terms of Elizabeth being beautiful, of Sapphi and Agatha being beautiful creatures, even though they're the words of the creature, they're still told by Victor. So I don't think it has to do with his opinion about things. Okay, so this is going to be a false statement, and here's our clue. This is a little too strong a wording here to say it's directly related to. It may be indirectly, but directly is like using one of those qualifiers where you say all of this or none of these. Okay, it's too big a generalization to be able to be a true statement. All right. The final question we'll look at is a question that's asking you to infer something from a letter that was written. So the purpose of Elizabeth's letter to Victor is to reveal. So Elizabeth writes a letter. Victor talks about the one in particular that he's reading. The others he mentions she's written, but this is one he actually receives and reads to us. Okay, and our choices are, we have 5 now. The death of William and his father. Okay, so actually let's look at choice E. It says none of the above. So to eliminate E, I have to look and see if one of these is true. If one of these could be true, then I have to eliminate E. Okay, the death of William and his father. So first of all, at this point in the story, the father's not dead. Okay, William dies, and the father also writes to tell William that death is William. So this is not Elizabeth's letter. This is the father's letter. So choice B. So I'm going to eliminate A. The shock over Victor's long absence and gossiping about the neighbors. So even if I wasn't close reading, this first part makes sense, that Victor's been gone for 4, 5, 6 years. So his long absence has been a shock to the family. Okay, but she doesn't certainly write about the gossiping of the neighbors, what the neighbors are saying about it. That doesn't sound anything like anything that's happened in the book. Elizabeth, it's not even within her character to do that. So I'm going to eliminate B as well. Okay. The other thing we don't typically get, we never see Elizabeth and Victor talking about, while they talk affectionately about each other, it's not really a love story that's going on here. She doesn't talk about her love for Victor and how she regrets not being at his bedside to nurse him through this sickness. That's not really part of it. It's not romantic in that sense. C is our much better answer, because in her letter she reminds Victor who Justine is, how she came to be there, what her backstory is and history is. And then she also talks about how she misses little William, how innocent he is. And this is really getting under Victor's skin, because he has an idea that, wait a minute, I think I know who killed this. And it's the idea that his family is now being touched by his own crime. Okay? All right. So what we've done is take a look at these 8 multiple choice questions. Hopefully you've gotten a little insight into how I construct test questions, and how you can kind of find your way around them. All right, good luck on your test.